everyone, welcome back to the channel. This was the Schmoedown, our retrospective series on the movie trivia Schmoedown. I'm Adelia, that's my buddy Josh, and this week we are talking about the top 5 heels in the Schmoedown. Josh, how you doing tonight?
Doing very good. I'm excited for about this topic because heel and face are definitely a phrase we kind of throw out a lot when we talk about the Schmoedown, and certain heel work and character work. For those who aren't in the wrestling terminology, faces are usually the heroes of the story, the people we root for. Heels are the villains. It's interesting when you define a heel. Like, would you define this character heel? This character is maybe a heel for only half their career, and half their career there was a face, or in between. How do we? So it's been going to be very interesting to see how we decide what qualifies as a heel, and how long of great heel work you have to do to make the top five. So I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation between me and Adelia. I'm excited to hear her list.
I agree. I'm excited to hear yours too. All of these lists we've been doing, we have very different criteria for them so far, so it'll be interesting to see what this one is. Do you want to start off with your honorable mention?
Sure. There were a couple people I thought about. The one person who I almost brought in, and this is an underrated name. There's a couple people who are going to be off my honorable mentions and off my list entirely, just because I don't view them as heels too much. For example, I'll just say John Roca. I don't fully view him as a heel in certain moments. Like in general, I think his character work was so unique to put him in the heel category is like it didn't feel 100% right with me. Same with Dagnino, and I'll give an honorable mention to, if we're talking about the exchange, the one person who I almost had on the list, very underrated character work because he was in a division that did not get a lot of matches in general throughout the year, is Gold Leader. I think Gold Leader was an absolutely, absolutely fantastic heel, and his character work was so fun. He made all his promos in the digital age, I think, and despite that, for the character work to be so memorable and fun and noticeable in the division where it's a lot of knowledge first versus character work. So I wanted to definitely give an honorable shout out to Gold Leader because he's probably not talked about it in these conversations a lot, mostly because he joined the league as it was ending or on the tail end, so he didn't get as much
Yeah,
matches, especially in Star Wars. But like from what we've seen, he definitely was in the trajectory for top five heels if he had a longer career.
I completely agree with that. I had Gold Leader on my list of honorable mentions as well, um, because he was I mean, like arguably you could say he was a heel just from that tacky gold jacket alone, because no baby face player would wear that. Um, all respect, Evan, the jacket was tacky. But my honorable mention list is Jeff Snyder, JTE, Ben Bateman, and Tom Dagnino. And let me just explain a little bit why. Snyder and Bateman, I think, when they were heels, were phenomenal heels. Snyder was almost always a heel, but Bateman fluctuated between face and heel. I've left them both off my top 5 for the same reason, which is charisma. They had too much charisma. I didn't feel they were super, like, dangerous, for lack of a better word. But I wanted to watch them more than I wanted to necessarily root against them, even though they were the quote unquote bad guys. So no top 5 lists for them, but honorable mentions. And then JTE and Dagnino, their heel work to me lived more in comedy than it did in conflict. So I left them off my top 5 list for that reason too. All of those things, charisma and comedy, are very real and valuable skills for being a heel in the Schmoedown. We had a lot of different characters that were charismatic heels or comedic heels, but they're just different qualities than I wanted my top 5 list to be.
Absolutely, and both JT and Snyder and Dagnino all didn't make my list as well. They would be great honorable mentions for me as well. They were all great, and for similar reasons, I let them off. Another name that quickly came to mind was Thad. We don't really talk
Thad
about
Williams, yeah.
we don't really talk about Thad Williams as a heel because he was kind of honestly most of the time when he was a heel and he took the Schmoedown away from Christian for a little bit, he was kind of a puppet in the corruption storyline, and because of that, we
Hmm.
don't view him as a heel because usually the heels are like someone we hate, and you almost felt too bad for Thad. But if you really
Yeah.
think about it, like he was like he at any point he could have just been like, you know what, Christian can have the league back. I messed up. Like he could have done the right thing, but he took it out to the end with Mike. And like I think in that type of sense, if you think about it from the storyline perspective, he actually is a
Yeah.
very interesting heel who is also very comedic. If you're talking about comedic heels, he might be one of the best comedic heels we've seen in
Yes,
Schmoedown.
I'd agree with that. Josh, do you want to talk a little bit about what you think makes a good heel for your top five list before
Absolutely.
you get into
So
number five?
absolutely. Like the thing I first think about is story in a way. Is like, why are you a villain? Is it just you're evil to be evil, or is there actually a reason behind it? The second thing is how hateable were you? Was I rooting against you for one specific reason? How long was I rooting against you? How long were you a heel? And the third thing I'm going to do is impact, where it's like, was there something so evil you did that had a huge impact? Was there a line that like still sticks to me in this day? Is there something you contributed to the Schmoedown that like will always be viewed somewhat villainous or hateable? And we'll get into one of the your honorable mentions that you left off. The reason why he's on my list, I almost put him on my honorable mentions as well, is because of one specific thing, impact wise, that was so heelish. Every time he did it, I was like, God, man, we'll get into it once we get to my number four. But I think we know both what we're talking about when it comes to this type of stuff.
Yeah. For me, my list is about the people who made me feel actual tension the second they walked into frame, not the ones where I wasn't so much entertained by the villainy as I was bracing for it. It's not just about heat or win loss records. None of my top five were performing really. They had the arrogance, the coldness, the edge, but all of it felt like it came from somewhere real, not like they're just bad people, but like they were able to tap into something within them that wasn't necessarily fake. What and it came out in different ways, whether it was actual championship dominance or receipts on every claim that they made. And I think that a lot of them didn't stay static either. They evolved and they made everything around them better because of it. They elevated rivalries, they gave factions identities, and made a whole division feel like a main event for a while. So that's how they ended up on my top five. All of these people at the height of their heelish powers, I couldn't wait to see them get their comeuppance.
Absolutely.
So, Josh, you want to start with your number five?
Yeah, talking about elevating a division, let's talk about my number five, Mike Kalinowski. And it might be surprising that I have Mike so low. And the reason I have Mike so low is, to be honest, when he was a heel, it was a lot, in my mind, justified in a way. I did root against him, but like you could
Yeah.
see how he turned because he was originally a face, and this is why great heels have great stories. Mike was originally a face who was a fan favorite in a lot of ways. He was a very good face, but
Yes, he
then
was.
an absolutely great face. But then he had an absolute terrible match against JT and Rachel Cushing, where he didn't feel the support. He got absolutely blown out. He was also he made it clear he loves the Inner Geekdom division, and he was having struggles there. And for him to turn on Roxy, who at the time was his manager in the league, with I think Johnny
Laquasto.
LaQuasto, and I think there was a third manager that I'm blanking
It
on.
wasn't a third manager, it was his partner in DC Movie News, Adam Gertler.
Got it. Okay. So, but for him to turn on, it makes sense. No one was there to support him in his biggest number one contender match. He got absolutely blown out. And then every kind of thing he blackmailed that to do for the Nergitum division, we were talking about previously on the IG division discussion, it all made the
It
division more live.
made sense.
It made sense. It was like when he said no more five-way matches in one of his cutscenes when he was blackmailing that. I was like, yeah, hell yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
But he was so still, despite all that, I still, even though his story made sense and I felt like I understood how he turned to this villainy, it still was very easy to root against him. I wasn't rooting for him in the corruption tournament just because he was right almost every or justified in every single leg. He was able to
Yeah.
balance that line of being like, oh no, he's 100% right, but I'm still want him to lose and get his comeuppance. It's a very tight balanced cross, and like for the four ahead of him, I think we're really because he has the impact and he has the story for sure. And then the third reason why I think it is just in hateability, he just didn't bring the hateability that the four other ahead of him brought for me. Like I wasn't like if he won the IG belt, which he did, I wouldn't have been destroyed. I was like a part of me was like I'm happy for him. He deserves it in a way. And like
Yeah.
the four ahead of him for me, I didn't feel as strong. I did not feel as happy when they either got success or not comeuppance.
Okay. Kalinowski's my number 3. Hi For me, his entry on the list wasn't about necessarily a persona, it was about the transformation. Because, like you said, early Mike was a great face. He was the lovable nerd. He was the, I believe they called him Wonder Bread at one point during his feud with Brienne Chandler. But then once he became heel Mike, he was cold, he was calculating, and he was ruthless in a way that nobody saw coming. Just because his decisions towards inner geekdom or whatever for the anarchy tournament or whatever it was made sense, because it all made sense to me. I didn't want any of it to work out for him. He formed corruption, both the storyline and then the faction. He became the perfect centerpiece for Shannon's vision once the faction era came into play and she took over managing corruption. All of his rivalries hit harder for me once he became a heel because of the fact that he was a heel. And he fully embraced the idea that championships simply belonged to him. The IG belt was his, the team's belts, whenever they had them. Of course they were going to win. Of course they were going to beat whoever was in front of them. And of course, like you said, his dealings with Thad made the Inner Geekdom division feel like a main event in the process of this storyline. I think that when you are a beloved face, which he was, reinventing yourself in front of an audience that already thinks it knows you is one of the hardest things to pull off in a format like this. And Kalinowski did it, in my opinion, better than pretty much anyone we ever saw going from face to heel. So that's why he's my number 3.
Absolutely. And you can make the argument, by the way, he went from face to heel and back to face again, to be honest, at the end of the
Yeah.
faction era. Like everyone kind of
Yeah.
got along on Mike's side after Shannon won it twice in a row. We kind of like there was a point in time where we were just like, yeah, corruption rocks. Yeah, they're right.
Yeah.
They keep
Yeah.
winning.
There were a lot of corruption fans out there, for sure. But you can be fans of heels. Like, of course you can.
I
But they
know.
did try to make corruption face in
Yeah.
season 9, and I just don't think it worked.
I think it worked a little, and I think the turning
I
point
think it worked for some of them, but not all of them.
I think it works specifically because there's a specific rivalry that we're going to get into later on in my list where Mike specifically was the face in that match.
Okay.
And from that point on, I think ever since that match, it was tough for him to be a true heel again. That's part of the reason why I had a harder time like putting him higher on the list. Now, I'll quickly say, if we're talking about like pure character work and we're not judging like heels or faces or anything, pure character work might be the top of the entire Schmoedown, just because of his transformation to be whatever the Schmoedown needed. At the
Yeah.
beginning of Schmoedown, I'm a great face. Great. You need a heel. I'm going to make that heel turn, and it was absolutely perfect. And we should also maybe quickly, and then in randomly in the midst of like his most success in the faction era, it's like, oh, you need me to be face in this match? Yeah, I can do that. I can do that with some edge.
That's true. That's true.
And so like I think that's very like his adaptability to be whatever the Schmoedown needed is should 100% be commended. And I just think when I think pure heel, I think there are some people who did it slightly better, but Mike did the face thing I think better than like almost like when we talk about the best heels of all time, they kind of have trouble going the face at moments. Mike by far, I think, like my number 4 on the list, I think had some trouble going back trying to be a face for some parts of the Schmoedown.
Yeah.
Mike did not have that trouble at all.
No. Well, I mean, Mike is also an actor, and he
Yeah.
knows how to play various different characters more than some of the people in the Schmoedown did. So I would expect him to have very good character work and transitions between being the bad guy and the good guy, depending on what the scenario is. So,
Absolutely. And before we move on to Mike, we should also mention the tidbit of why Christian chose to turn him heel, which was, if I remember correctly, he was on a fan show and they had a
yeah, all the
segment.
belts,
He
I
was on
think,
all
was
the
the name of
belts,
the podcast.
and they had a segment where they asked Face to do a heel promo, I believe. And Mike did
And
a
he
heel
cut a
promo.
heel promo, and it was amazing. I heard it. It was
Yeah.
great.
And the minute Christian heard that, he's like, "Okay, we're gonna find a excuse to turn you heel." And they had a great excuse. I mean, the Schmoedown is sometimes the matches write the storyline themselves because after that JT and Rachel match, it was just so
Mhm.
easy for him to turn. It was so
It
easy.
was, yeah. It was. My number 5 is one of your honorable mentions, Roca, John Roca. Not all of Roca in the Schmoedown was a heel, but the Roca that I first got introduced to in the Schmoedown, the Outlaw, the first real character I ever saw in the Schmoedown, was 100% a heel. And if you want to talk about the best trash talkers the Schmoedown ever produced, Roka's one of them. The Outlaw, definitely one of them. What made him dangerous wasn't necessarily the volume of everything he said, because he did say a lot. He also could back it up. Every claim, every verbal jab, every bit of delusion adjacent confidence came with receipts that he would pull up and dish out. He knew exactly which buttons to push when it came to his opponents, and he pushed them while still playing as a legitimate competitor, not a cartoon. And that's a tightrope that some of the heels in the Schmoedown never even attempted, walking the line between anti-hero and villain without ever really fully committing to either side. Roka at times was an anti-hero and at times a villain, but that's why he sits at 5 on my list and not higher. My top 4, in my opinion, when they were heels, all wanted the booze from the crowd and the fans. Roka wanted the booze and the respect at the same time, and threading that needle capped his ceiling as a heel, even as it made him one of the most compelling competitors the league had ever had. So that's why he made my list.
Absolutely, and like we're talking about pure character work again. Like Roka is up, like he might be number one. Him and Kanonowski battling out. Like these are two amazing American character works. But when we're specifically talking about this and specifically heels, my mind, I just think the anti-hero work was more memorable than the heel work when it came to Roka. Like despite the outlaw being a villain, he was kind of and he trash talked a lot. There was still like an honor almost to the outlaw. There was an
Yeah, yeah.
honor that most heels don't have. And like also when I think about it, it's like when I think about his heeldom, it's like I can kind of like point the moments in my top 5 of them being like actual villains. With the outlaw, it's mostly trash talk focused, where it's like I can't
Hmm.
remember a specific moment where it's like I can't imagine the outlaw blackmailing the commissioner or like getting his hands dirty in some sort of way. He would like
Yeah.
really bring it in a match, but like for example, one of the most famous heel moments is Andrew Guy tackling Roca, or the Ben Bateman versus Andrew Guy hit fisticuffs in certain ways, where I think Andrew Guy originally hits Bateman, and then in the match in Houston, Bateman gets Andrew Guy back in that sense. I just can't imagine the Outlaw doing that, just because of how much
Yeah.
respect he had for the game, and I think that respect always carried through. So it was tough for me to put it for the top 5 heel list.
And I totally understand that. I just, when I think about heels, the very first heel that comes to mind for me was Roka in season 3 at the very beginning of the Schmoedown, because that's how he introduced himself to me.
Absolutely.
So I felt like I had to put him on my list. Josh, who's your number 4?
My number 4 is one of your honorable mentions, and that's Ben Bateman. It was very tough for me to put Ben Bateman on this list because his partner is a bit higher on my list, and I was like, do I really put both of them on the list when it's like they kind of have shared feats in a way in certain
Mm-hmm.
stuff? But like, I think what really stood out for me and where I was like, I have to put Bateman on the list is the 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 slow answer, if you will. The counting down in round 2, he clearly knew the answer and he was like faking, like, oh, I don't know. And then he just answers it and it's like correct. It's like
Yeah.
that one thing alone is like, okay, you deserve to be a top because you could feel the announcers, his opponent, every time that he does it. And by the way, it's funny because it's like it's something that like strategically makes sense to use all your time to check your work. If this was any other sport or thing or chat, like for example, chess, if you make a move too fast, people will kill you for it if you're a grandmaster. Or if you're learning chess, like your chess teacher will murder you if you're just constantly move the pieces too fast or da da da. And if you're on a test and you're trying to do a test and you have extra time, it makes sense to extra time to check and all the type of stuff. But in the
Yeah.
Schmoedown, using that extra time so maliciously in a way and to
Mm-hmm.
further the heel work when I talk about the impact of a heel, like that one thing alone just differentiated him. And when you talk about hateability, Ben Bateman, even as a, it shows that like when he tried to turn face a little, when he joined the Horsemen and when he was in the exchange and he was partnered with Dan Murrell, it truly never 100% worked. We kind of all were kind of waiting for him to turn heel
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
So that he's my number 4.
100%. Yeah, he's just too charismatic for me. I never like hated Bateman. Even when he was the bad guy in things, I never was like he was arrogant and but he was too charismatic for me. Like watching him was entertaining. It wasn't like, "Oh, I don't know what this guy's going to do next. I don't know what's going to happen next." Um but he was very good when he was a heel. Very good. So
Absolutely.
that's why I included him in my honorable mentions. My number 4, you had just mentioned, is his team action partner, Andrew Guy. There was never a moment for me, when he broke character on the show. Not cutting a promo, not arguing with an opponent, not in a backstage segment. He lived his character and he evolved it. It started out as, the arrogant know-it-all in team action, escalated into some physical stuff in the feuds with Top 10 and then with Bateman. And then the Schmoedown stuff after he absolutely lost it because of the match he did with Ethan Irwin against Marisol and Adam Collins during the teams tournament in season 8 that led to the whole Schmoedown stuff, which, despite the fact that wasn't necessarily him as a heel anymore, took him out of the performer that he had been at the time and put him back to like the team action know-it-all in the suits and the glasses and everything. And his just like commitment to the role, commitment to that character was great. And then he turned into an insufferable commentator in a way too. He was always fully dimensional the entire way. I never saw him as a one-note villain, despite, constantly wanting to see him get knocked out of tournaments or matches or whatever. So from the Roca tackle to putting Bateman through a table to climbing onto the desk to curse everyone out when he beat Dan Murrell, something no one, including Christian Harloff, thought he could do. I just thought Andrew Guy was perfect in the role that he played in the Schmoedown, and he's one of the best heels that we ever had.
Absolutely. And that's why he's my number 1. He was my
Yeah.
number 1 on the list. I think like if you could talk about impact, that Dan Murrell match alone, but also team action. He had some both him and Bateman, so both
Yeah.
of them. But like Andrew Guy had so many moments. He was also the one who do the tackle on Roca. When you talk about just impactful heel moments, Guy has so many. And when you talk about like the when he beat Dan Murrell in such a dominating fashion, it's like it transcended another level. It's like
Hmm.
when I think of heel, like iconically, I think of Andrew Guy. I think when he was at the height of his powers, and also in the Shimominati thing, he kind of carried that storyline. Like
He did. He did.
everything around him,
The
not good.
only part of that storyline that made sense was the Andrew Guy stuff.
Yes,
Even though it included him just waking up thinking it was like 5 years earlier, like that didn't make any sense at all. The only part of it that made sense was the Andrew Guy stuff.
it almost felt like at moments the character work was so good it almost impacted the gameplay, which I'm not sure how many players you can say. Whereas
Yeah.
like it truly like the Shimon, he was so in the Shimon thing. As an when I was watching as an audience, I'm like, this character work is weirdly, I feel like, impacting gameplay. I'm not sure how true that is, but like it felt true in the moment, and like he was so committed to the work.
Yeah.
Him and Bateman were so good in team action, and then when he went heel, also by the way, going heel when Bateman says, "I'm going to stick with Riley because we're winning." That was
Hmm.
another extremely great heel moment. There's so many
That's
great
when he put Bateman through the table.
yes.
Andrew Guy, the only person in my recollection to result to physical violence against two opponents in the Schmoedown with the Roca tackle and putting Bateman through the table.
Absolutely. It's one of those things where it's just like with Guy, it's just when he's at his best, there's no one better than him when it comes to character work.
Yeah.
And because of
Yeah.
that, and when I think of pure heel, he's the one who was like, oh, when I think of him, I think of a heel. I don't think of a face. I don't think of an in-betweener, even though they kind of went a little in between with the Mominati and some other moments. Like when his best work has always
When
been
by
as a heel.
Yeah, by the time he was a commentator, he was way more leaning towards the face side than the heel side, I think. But he was still insufferable even as a commentator. And then when they came out of retirement to play that one match, just team action in season 9, he just sort of fell right back into it. And yeah, like his trivia performances weren't always the best. Like that match against Bateman, the first one in the wrestling ring at the Houston live event, where he just gets absolutely destroyed, is not great. Neither of the two Bateman Guy matches were great. I think both of them resulted in Bateman knocking out Guy, not even TKOing him, just straight knocking him out. But the Bateman versus Guy storyline leading up to that Houston live event was so good that it's one of my favorite one-on-one individual feuds in all of the Schmoedown.
Absolutely.
So, Josh, who's your number 3?
Chandru.
John. He's my number 2.
Yes, Chandru was an absolutely fantastic heel. And also, when we're talking about getting back to the story, I mean, even though Guy's my number one, his story was kind of just like, oh, he's a bit of a asshole in a way. Like he's a confident
Yeah.
asshole, but he's still like there isn't as much behind. With Chandru, he tried to be a face, and he tried to be a face so hard. And it's similar to the Mike Kananowski thing. But funny enough, with Mike, he felt betrayed by his support, his teammate, and his
Yeah.
manager. For Chandru, he felt betrayed by the fans because the fans weren't buying his face work at
Yeah.
all.
No one bought into his nice guy act.
No. And we all respected Chandru's game and thought he was pretty good, but no one really thought he was championship caliber. And for him to prove everyone wrong, also against Mets, and also having one of the coldest, in retrospect, lines against
Yes.
Mets, is like when I talk about impact with Chandru, it's like that line alone is like chilling. And Chandru was such a heel. They had to have Mike play the face in the match again. It's like
Mm-hmm.
when you have Mike Kalinowski and a faction that his name is corruption, and they have to
Yeah.
be the good guys and the heroes against Chandru. It's
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, I met Chandru at the live event, the last live spectacular, where he came out on stage, ripped his shirt and all kinds of stuff as the lead in to Smets coming back. And he's the nicest guy. He's like, we had a lot of stories about Chandru that weekend because he was just everywhere I went. Chandru was there, and he was just so nice and so sweet. And then he'd slip into the heel persona, and I could not hate him more. And that's what I loved about Chandru so much. Once he finally turned heel, he carried himself like he was the smartest person in the room because he truly believed he was. And honestly, in real life, the man has a PhD and works in aerospace engineering, so he might actually have been the smartest person in the room. That self belief curdled into arrogance, and the arrogance turned into, in my opinion, one of the most effective championship heel runs in the Schmoedown history. Especially since he took the belt from Smets right before Smets announced his cancer diagnosis, and that made everyone hate Chandru even more. Almost as if Chandru had given Smets the cancer, which is so ridiculous in retrospect that people just hated Chandru because of that so much. And for me, it was earned heel work from Chandru. He didn't fake it. He didn't manufacture it. His run worked because none of it was a performance just for a performance. It had something behind it. It was earned very much. He'd do the dances and people would boo him and all of this stuff, and he just got sick of it and snapped, and he was great as a heel. Absolutely great.
absolutely, and there were even moments where it's like because I think the blame wasn't that is because I think Smets had to go on afterwards and say because the line that we're talking about is it'll all be all over
It'll
soon,
all be over soon.
which is not which I don't think Chandra which Smets had to say afterwards. He did not know at the time.
Yeah.
He did not
Yeah.
know that I was just diagnosed with cancer before the match.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things. It's like as a fan, once you immediately announce that afterwards, and you hear Chandru say that, and you don't know what they know behind the scenes, it's like even like like the amount of hateability. If that was like for a while, that was like, oh my god, I can't believe you said that to someone.
He might be the most hated heel in Schmoedown history. But
Kind of
again, one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my
absolutely,
life.
And we should also quickly say all these top five heels. I'm sure outside the Schmoedown,
Oh
very
yeah.
nice
Oh
people.
yeah. 100%. This is a testament to their ability to play the character. This is not us calling them the worst human beings to ever walk the face of this earth. Because none of them are. None of
Yeah,
them are.
absolutely. But he was so good, and it was so interesting because he was kind of had a face manager as well. And like, if you think about it, there's a lot of things that like could have made the character work. And like you said about Mike, about him being an actor, Chandru wasn't an actor.
No,
Chandru,
he wasn't.
he was a fan who had a job in STEM, and like that's you. It's usually it's very tough, and it's funny because it's like one of his biggest rivals was Brandon Hanna, and
Hmm.
Hannah originally came in heel, and they were and like you could see like everything Hannah was trying to do was what Chandru ended up doing. And I'm a
Yeah.
Brendan Hanna fan, but like everything they were building up Hannah for in a lot of ways, Chandru just kind of did it better.
Yeah, he did. He did. Um, so Kalinowski's my number three and Chandru's my number two. Who's your number two?
So this might be surprising. This is a name that I don't think gets talked about enough. It's Grace Hancock.
Okay.
I really think she's one of the most underrated great heels, mostly because she's not a player. She doesn't get matches. She's always behind the scenes. But like whenever she was on screen, whenever she would talk, it's just kind of like there like I think one of the most underrated storylines within the faction is Grace taking over the Schmoedown from Christian in the Schmoeminati like kind of like era. And I think she's a great villain to bounce off of. And like,
Yeah.
even though she was never in the spotlight, I just always enjoyed her character work. I think she was very good at the role she played. She was never a face. She was always a heel, and she played her role almost perfectly, in my opinion.
Oh, 100%. I agree with that. She didn't make my list because, quite frankly, I didn't even think to put her on the list, but she deserves to be on the list. Um, Grace was amazing. She was the first real female heel manager, and she was a good counterpoint to Emma Fife at the time, who was this very happy go lucky face manager. And the Emma Fife and Grace Hancock dynamic is one that is one of my favorite dynamics in all of the Schmoedown. So great pick there, Josh.
Absolutely, and it was one of those things where I wished, and one of the most frustrating things about the Shmo Minati, how it ended is that they
Yeah.
just were like, oh Sam, Sam telling Grace, it's over, you don't have power. It's because what Grace worked so well is when she had power, when she was this
Yeah.
dangerous threat. And I think there were some lines in the storyline where it's like Christian's like, you can't let Grace in. You like Grace is like someone that even Christian kind of feared of like,
Mhm.
oh, she is someone not to be messed with. She is dangerous. She is evil. She is someone that I think it was her and Jay in the Schmoeminati, but the way she kind of controlled Jay in certain moments as well was it's just like there were so many underrated moments with her that we don't talk about enough. I just think that wanted to give her flowers and be like it's like she was someone I always noticed and be like if they gave her like a full storyline, I think it would be
Yeah.
like rock solid. And they tried to do that a little with the Schmoeminati. And I'll say
They did it a little with the Schmoeminati. They did it a little with Kate when Kate was coming in as a manager in season 7, but that kind of all got thrown to the wayside because of COVID. So,
they did a little
I
Shannon as well with a rivalry with Shannon.
yeah. Grace is a great poll. Speaking of Shannon, she's my number 1. Um if we're grading purely on effectiveness, Shannon might be the best there ever was. She never leaned on cartoon theatrics the way some heel managers did. Everything she did felt personal. From the unbeatable rookie thing after Chance had beaten Robert Parker to the ukulele songs that she used to do. Her insults weren't punchlines; they were precision strikes designed to get under the skin and stay there. Corruption became for me the premier heel faction in Schmoedown history because Shannon took the identity that Ken and Grace had developed for Corruption and then multiplied it by 100. I mean, she did it by controlling every room she walked into. Fans didn't just dislike her, they loved rooting against the Queen of Corruption, which is the entire job description of a great heel done to perfection, in my opinion. And she elevated so many performances of people who were playing as heels and even people not playing as heels, because I don't think you can argue that Adam Collins was ever really a heel. I don't think you can argue that Marisol McKee was ever really a heel. But being a heel manager managing such effective faces and still managing effective heels like Mike, like Chance, like other members of Corruption. There was the crazy stuff she did with Elliot Dewberry, and taking like the one of the greatest heel moments in the history of the Schmoedown, not in a match to me, is Shannon on stage at that first draft doing the wild berries, and then says, "Elliot Dewberry, you're mine," and breaks up the wild berries instantly. That's one of my favorite heel moments in all of the Schmoedown. So Shannon's my number one.
Absolutely, and a great call out there. The only reason she's not on my list is, and I might be blinded by this, is what you were saying about Bateman being too charismatic. That's kind of how I felt with, like, with Shannon. Like, I was always just on board with everything she did, and I
Mm-hmm.
was a little that way with Mike as well. But with Shannon, I was just like, yeah, this rules. This is awesome. And I was so happy when she broke up the Wildberries as someone who wasn't a fan of the Wildberries. So I was
Yeah,
might
yeah,
be a little swayed in that, where I wasn't too heartbroken when that happened. I was like, oh, this rule, because as soon as she did it and the lead up to it, I was just like, oh, this rules. I love this. This is so good. It's like everything she did, character work wise. It's just like, it was very tough for me to ever imagine her as a heel, because it's just like she won me over very early on, and she won a lot of people over success, because being a villain is normally unearned confidence. Is being like,
yeah,
oh, I'm the best, and then someone coming up and being like, no, you're not. I'm humble, but I'm also the best, and I'm going to beat you, type of thing. Shannon was the best, and no one was able to take that title from her. It's like the same
yeah.
way I view Bill Belichick, in a way where it's like, I mean, I could hate Bill Belichick, and he can be, I don't love how he deals with reporters. That's different, because Shannon's playing a character and Bill Belichick is not, obviously. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
at a certain point, after so much success, it's like, dude, you can kind of do what you want. I mean, you kind of have all the money in the bank, and that's kind of how I felt like with Shannon, why she didn't make the list. But if we're talking pure character work, absolutely, and I'm blinded just because I was just so on board. I was never a Corruption
Well,
fan, but I was like on
yeah.
board with almost everything she did.
Well, like that first promo she ever cut, which was at the Spectacular at the end of season 6, when she walked out there and she kicked off her shoes and she just took everyone to task about how Mike had been treated by Grace and Ken and everything else, and it was her faction now, and she was going to do everything, and then she backed it up. And that to me is arrogance that was not earned, that she then earned the next season. And she's just she I love Shannon. She's one of my favorite characters the Schmoedown ever had. I can see what you mean about her being charismatic, but she was charismatic in such a different way to like Snyder and Bateman for me, that she's my favorite heel the Schmoedown's ever had.
Absolutely, and it's very interesting when we do our top five heels. We had a couple of names very high up that we didn't have on our list. You had Shannon, I had Grace. What's it called?
Yeah.
Guy was my number one. You had him number three, and so on. So it was
Number
very interesting.
4.
Number four.
Yeah.
So it's interesting for sure, and like, I think, I think it's very debatable. I'm sure. Put in the comments your top five list. I bet you we're going to get a range of, like, some people having Guy number
Yeah.
one, some people having Kalinowski number one, Shannon, Roca. I would.
Grace is a great shout to be high up on people's list too. Um yeah, so thank you everyone for joining us here today on this August edition of This Was the Schmoedown. Josh, where can people find you?
They can find me here. On This Was the Schmoedown. We're still in the process of pre-recording these, so I'm hoping we will have these monthly to January, and
We will. We'll get
we
them
will.
done.
Yeah, we're pretty sure about that, and we got a couple of very fun episodes we're excited about. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know your top five heel lists. Let us know how you define a heel. Like, I know what's called, we having Roka and Mike Kanowski, I think so low on both our lists when for a lot of people they'll be number one. I think I'm very interested to hear what people's heel lists are and
Yeah.
how they viewed a heel. What was the impact? What was the moments that kind of like, oh, this is where it turned for me? What are your favorite heel moments? Like, comment, subscribe. We're also going to. I'm also someone monthly on the Step Back with the basketball show on Good Friends Better Rivals, our sister channel, which is sports. So we're going to be talking some basketball. There's a lot of basketball moves where we haven't recorded yet the episode free agency recap, and there's a lot to go over. So I'm excited to talk about that with Shug.
Yeah. That one will have just aired on the Good Friends Better Rivals channel. If you want to go check that out, there's a link to Good Friends Better Rivals in the description of this episode. As Josh mentioned, we're pre-recording these episodes because I'm about to have spinal fusion surgery. So we wanted to make sure to give you guys episodes till the end of the year because I'm probably not going to be on the channel till the end, till January at the earliest. So you'll see a lot of these episodes pre-recorded. If you would like these episodes a week before they become public, you can subscribe over on Patreon at the $5 and up level, and you'll get them released either on Patreon or Ko-Fi at the $5 and up level a week before they go live on the channel. So check those out if you're so interested. There's links in the description. They're also on the screen. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're always so happy to see people keep subscribing to the channel. We also love reading your comments, so please do comment down below with the top 5 heels in your opinion. We'd love to have conversations with you guys about your lists in the comments. So, Josh, thank you very much, and until next time, everybody, we are out of here. Bye.